Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my pleasure to have Gert Mellak with us. Gert is the founder of SEOLeverage.com, an SEO platform that helps online course creators leverage search marketing for their business growth. Gert, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephan. It's an honor to be here.
So we know each other through a mutual friend, James. James has been on this podcast, James Schramko. And we're both we've both been in James's mastermind, so that's called Silver Circle. And I'd love to start off by if you could share your story about how you got to meet James and join Silver Circle, because like for me, James has been really transformational to my business and in my life as well.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your story about James and what he's done for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely a pleasure to share this, because it's definitely been a really big impact, his coaching and his guidance over the years. I started out really as a web developer, freelance web developer years ago. Started building some websites, found out having a website is not enough. You need to be found, you need to be ranking somewhere. Then started with SEO, but was dabbling in a lot of different things, from lead generation to social ads to Google Ads, obviously, and video marketing. And we pretty much did all kinds of things a local business requested in our area. So we did everything, software development, all those things. And that I remember that the moment I heard James the first time. This was on Rick Mulready's podcast, really. And he was a guest there, and he talked about how it's interesting when you strip down to a few services, you get really specialized. It makes sense to not offer tons of things. And I was at the moment where on a Friday, maybe I sent a quote for a software product in a software language, in a programming language I didn't even dominate. But I just sent a quote, studied it over the weekend just to offer and edit on the website on Monday again, just to have an additional service. And I thought this was a really good idea. And this was like a very contrarian approach back then. So I was like, yeah, maybe there's something I'm missing, because I was working like 60, 70 hours a week, doing all kinds of things. My team was very, very small back then. We now have 30 people on the team. We had like, I think one for accounting and one helping me out here and there a little bit. So this was like just the right advice at the right time. And I joined what was called back then Super Fast Business, which was like a private forum membership. Now it's called jamesschramko.com. And I started getting some advice, which was really heading in the right direction. So one of the advice was definitely stripping down services. So I started taking things off the website and not offering anymore. I started getting rid of some clients where I said it's just this particular client doing this. It's not everybody who needs this service. So we started stripping down and really ultimately sticked with only a handful of things, and among them SEO. And then we continued for a few years, and SEO was the only thing that really continued to grow, where we felt we could provide the best value. And we then started to pair this at some point with the software development. So now we are at a situation where we have a platform developed where we help course creators get into the SEO. And this was also the moment then when we partnered up with James at some point and went into Silver Circle and got like a more dedicated attention on specific growth. Let's put it this way.
And are you in other masterminds as well, or are you just focused really on getting the coaching and the community from James?
No, we definitely are also part of other masterminds. So SEO masterminds, we're part of a software mastermind to build our software out as a software as a service or with a service platform. These days we have a software layer, but also able to provide a service. So in my personal experience, it has been working really, really well when I have a little bit of hand holding for a new thing I want to build out. And this is a little bit of a personal experience I can share. I know there are people out there that just go after it and get things done. I always like to have some sort of structure that gets me in the right direction, and then I can flourish, I can develop there, and I can do my things. But I feel it's a much faster way if you have somebody there that has already done this before and has already been there. They already have built and sold a software, or they already have built and created an agency, or they have already have done some other SEO experiments that you haven't done. This all brings you a lot of advantages when it comes to speed of execution, speed of getting into a new field, or getting really deep in a particular vertical, I believe. What's your experience with masterminds?
Oh, I love them. They've been game changing for me. I'm usually in 5 or 6 masterminds at a time. So yeah,
Right. Absolutely.
It's kind of a lot. I don't recommend it for everybody.
It is.
But,
it is.
But you also don't have to attend everything. You don't have to partake in every training or go to every event or every virtual meetup. It's just whatever you're drawn to, whatever you feel intuitively like you need to be at that particular thing, then follow your intuition. But yeah, you don't have to do everything.
I think I very often compare this with the gym. You can do it on your own, and if you're able to have the consistency, you have the knowledge on how to work out and what weight and what diet, etc., you can get a personal trainer helping you on this journey and probably get better and faster results. And this is where I say, okay, I have a personal trainer for a few months and I can do this on my own, but you get a very fast start. But I agree, it can get a lot. If you have 5-6 mastermind calls every week, you really need to be selective.
Yeah, it's like a mastermind may only be a once a month or a few times a year sort of get together. But yeah, it just depends on what what you can take on bandwidth wise and what you're trying to accomplish. I'm curious with the SEO mastermind. What do you which mastermind is it? What are you trying to accomplish there?
I think I'm part of this IMG mastermind or IMG group, if you want to call it like this. For me, it's really important. We run our own SEO tests. We have our experiments. It's interesting when you have a little bit of scale there, where you can say, okay, what are others doing? What kind of results are others getting with their experiments? Learn something. You can only test so much at a given time in a safe space. So definitely this kind of leverage. It's interesting to be able to ask peers about their experience. I was just talking to a few SEOs about image search in case they have discovered there's only so much in my experience you can do with image search. But it's interesting to bounce this off some other experienced SEOs. What have they experienced? How can we best focus on in a particular field of SEO, for example? And it's always interesting to benchmark yourself against peers and say, okay, am I missing out? Have they discovered anything that could be helpful for my clients, and vice versa? Very often, also, we have something to share. We have something to say when it comes to conversion tracking, for example, when it comes to user experience. We have a lot of work done there. So it's really interesting to be able to share this.
And when you're testing SEO, like what sort of tests are you conducting? Elaborate a bit more on that.
We have two kinds of tests here that we run. So first of all, we have our own testing sites where we try to do single variable tests. And okay, there are some things we want to check. Is this still valid? Does this still work? Is this some things Google might say we tested? Does this really can this be confirmed with data? I only believe so much of what Google tells us. Some things I really want to test. And then we do also testing, A/B testing with client sites, where we pick a sample of their URLs. Maybe if there's a client with 500 blog posts, we might pick 5 or 10, make a change. We have our tracking software to see, does this change positively impact this sample versus the other URLs at this time? Can we repeat this again? Can we consistently say this is a good idea to go down that route? Very often clients come to us when they had some really good success with SEO because they started early, they had little competition, but over time then a lot of this initial traction gets lost, but they keep following this process from 10 years ago. And this is where it's like, okay, look, a few posts are still doing well. We're not going to drastically change everything, but let's pick a sample of those URLs that used to do well but don't anymore and try something and see if we can prove with data that this is a good idea. And then even clients that are very reluctant and say, look, I don't want to change anything. My articles are perfect as they are. Once you can show them with data that they can suddenly get an easy 30, 40, 50% plus changing the way they present content on their site, for example, even they are then happy to accept that there might be a different way in the last 10 years do SEO, and they might need to shift gears a little bit and really be more open to change.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you using off-the-shelf SEO software primarily, or is it primarily your own platform that you've developed? Or
we use both.
Yeah,
we use both. So we have a series of SEO tools, obviously, but then just developed our own version of a few of those, especially when it comes to testing. We have our own software when it comes to analyzing data, really where to go down for better conversions, etc. I'm really not happy, and also when with Google Analytics, for example, it's a great tool, but I think it's really, really bad at presenting content in an actionable way. So we build our own little dashboard around it to just grab the KPIs that are interesting for clients and present them in a user-friendly way, so they can easily see what goes up, what goes down. So with Google Analytics, it's really hard to figure out which of your 500 articles are on a downwards trend in the last months. It's not easy to figure this out, right? So you click your reports together somehow with some Data Studio hacks, or you have some sort of VA who doesn't have too much to do to put this together, or you just have a software that does the number crunching for you.
Yeah. So, like, what are you using to do tracking as far as software off the shelf, or services off the shelf? Are you using SEMrush, Ahrefs?
We're using Ahrefs predominantly. We were using SEMrush and Ahrefs together. At some point, we just found the entire agency tended towards Ahrefs. So, but yeah, for me, they're like Nikon and Canon is a little bit of an overall brand game, in my opinion. I tell my clients I don't care what they use, as long as they have some sort of tool they know how to use and how to get the information out. We use Ahrefs. We have been using link research tools for a long time for backlink analysis. I think there's little competition out there. If you want to do a backlink audit, use Majestic. We use a lot of content now. Content creation obviously is always interesting to compare existing content to what's ranking out there. So we use Surfer SEO, InLinks, these kinds of tools. Yeah, I think those are probably the ones we use the most, and then there are probably like a lot of smaller tools we use here and there where it makes sense.
So, what is your favorite tool inside of Ahrefs, for example?
Interesting question. I think what I tend to use a lot is the top pages. Top pages showing where does the traffic come from to a particular website. Especially because when I get on a call with someone reaching out who wants to get an opinion, or like we do those free action plans where I tell them a few things where they could get started with their SEO, it's very interesting for me to check this out. I remember a particular story. There was a man who he just bought a website. He started to get into the website flipping game. He just spent $20,000 on a website. This was about barbecues, I think, an affiliate site. And I just opened up these top pages and in Ahrefs, and I said, look, your traffic pretty much depends on the homepage, right? So he got 90-something% of the traffic to his homepage. And I think 2 weeks later, we hadn't even finished the audit yet. 2 weeks later, he dropped like 80% because there was a core update. Google just said, look, this site doesn't add any value. I totally agreed. I told him before. But it's like very interesting to drill down a bit where the traffic comes from. We have a lot of clients who just check their overall traffic in Google Analytics when they come to us and say, look, I ask for the SEO, and they say, look, there's a lot of traffic on my site, right? So then we break it down and say, okay, how much of this traffic is really organic, meaning coming from non-paid Google or search results, probably Google clicks. Then we have this organic segment that tells us how much traffic comes from there. But then we still don't know how much of this traffic is actually branded, how much of this traffic comes from people typing in your brand name into Google and then clicking on a Google result coming to your site. So until you drill down into the data, you really don't know much, in my experience. Yeah. And this is what we try to establish. This is where we build a branded and non-branded tool in our platform as well, where we just say, look, just to get an idea, it's 70% branded traffic or 10% branded traffic is a big difference when it comes to evaluating how well your SEO efforts are going.
Yeah. Well, in Ahrefs, there are so many different tools. it's a little overwhelming to some people, and it can be confusing. For example, you mentioned top pages, but there's also best by links, which gives you a different list of pages on the site. And some folks are confused, they're not sure what the use cases are for each of those different tools in Ahrefs. So I'm curious if you could differentiate for our listener uh, why they might go into best by links and see which pages are getting the most links versus the top pages, which are the pages getting the most traffic.
Differentiating, you mean for whom this might be interesting?
Yeah. So what would be examples of insights or actions that can be taken from each of those two reports?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, well, for example, this top pages is really for us initially, before I have access to the data of a website, already tells me, do we have an over dependence on a certain kind of article? Sometimes clients get tons of traffic to an article that might not even drive the right traffic in or right people into their funnel. So we really want to know, do we need to build more traffic pillars below their strategy? Best by links is an interesting one, for example, to see if there is potential for internal linking. So if you get a lot of link juice into particular pages because they went viral, because they got like a lot of traction, then you check out these pages. And if it's not used for internal linking, you're not really leveraging the potential. Here you could really use, or you also can identify topics that naturally seem to be attracting more links than others. And if this is a topic that resonates with your audience, you really want to circle around this. This is really one of the main reasons we built the platform for our clients, is to make sure they can circle around what's working well. And this is, for example, based on the topics, but it's also then based on conversions. There are going to be only a handful of articles on an average site that convert really, really well, that bring people in. This is the first article they see, the landing page or the entry point, as we call it very often. And then people are ready to take action. It's only going to be a handful, but you want to identify them. You want to see what topics are they about, what kind of mindset might a search user have when they come through those pages, and can I do more of it? Can I talk more about this from different angles? I really like what you're putting out, for example, because you very often work cross-platform. So where you say you talk about SEO, but you also talk, okay, let's not forget about social media. There's room for combining different traffic channels. And this is also what we see, where I say, look, these are the topics that resonate really well with organic search traffic. Why don't you pick up this intel that we have here and translate this to social media and start talking about those things? Because apparently this resonates with people that are at the right spot to take action and take like the next step. Whereas if we just talk about what we think is interesting versus what might catch people in the right moment, it's a very different game. I always remember a local client, one of my first clients here when I moved to Spain. They have a furniture store, an office furniture store. And the owner, he had been doing this for 20 years. He said, everybody comes because of the desk. So everybody has in mind what kind of desk they want. After that, they end up buying furniture for the entire office, but everybody just talks about the desk. So what we did was position them really, really well for office desks and different variations and synonyms, because we knew this was the entry point. This was based on their experience. And this is where it's so important for us to compare whatever data we have from social media, from Google search campaigns, from YouTube, from wherever, in order to make sure that the initial keyword research, to make sure that the topic research goes in the direction already. And very often part of this intel is really the client's experience, where I say, look, whenever I pick up the phone, this is what people ask me the first.
That's great. And you can also use these different tools inside of Ahrefs for competitive research and brainstorming and kind of emulating what the competitors are up to. So Best by Links, for example, could give you insight on what are your competitors' top performing pieces of content in terms of getting links, and then you one up them with something even better on the same topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about LRT, link research tools, and how you use that in your agency. What would be some use cases for LRT's amazing tool set?
LRT is really, I think, only for a handful of people and not really for the end user. This is my impression, right? In a sense that it's really a very, very powerful toolkit. I had Christoph Kemper on the podcast. We had a great discussion how Google is just really focused at its heart, really on links. It's still content plus links. So Google kind of, my personal feeling is Google is trying to make us believe they're much smarter than they are. In the sense that at its heart, I'm curious about your opinion about this. In my opinion, they want us to believe they understand everything. They understand everything. They understand cross language now, cross reference, and can come up with the smartest way, and they figure out everything, and it's just there, right? Then you talk to SEOs, and I talked to Christoph Kemper, for example, who said, look, there are a lot of things that haven't changed. They just build layers on top of this over time. But at the heart, it's still content plus links, which makes a lot of sense. The content is not going to be going away as a ranking factor, and the links are just to really back this up, because everybody can put something out, but unless you have people or other entities on the internet backing this up with a link, it's probably not worth much. So for me, link research tools is like one of the most powerful tools when it comes to going really narrow and really focused on what is driving in a competitive landscape, for example, the needle. And very often it's not content alone. There's still niches out there where we can go a really long way with content optimizations, especially when it comes to user experience, especially when it comes to very specific content, not those general pages that used to work a few years ago, but very specific content answering a specific search query. You can go a long way with this. But then as soon as you go to a little bit higher search volumes, more competitive things, you're just identifying the gap. We always try to identify the gap. Where are we? Where is the competition? How can I bridge this gap? And in most cases, then what we see is that the bridge needs to be the gap needs to be bridged by links. And then you have link research tools really looking into the competitive landscape, into link velocity, into obviously the detox profile. If you're working certain niches, a certain level of spammy links is just normal, versus in other niches it's not normal. So you want to really make sure you can fit in there.
Yeah. So link velocity is a metric that a lot of SEOs are not tracking, and LRT has the LVT, link velocity trends metric, to help you track that. You can see if you're losing more links than you're gaining over time, because that's not good, or you're slowing down in terms of your link velocity, in terms of getting fewer links than you used to 6 or 12 months ago. That also makes you look less like you're part of the zeitgeist. And link toxicity is something that I think LRT is second to none in terms of analyzing for toxic links. And the whole scoring methodology, and how they collect all these toxic links, and it's really impressive.
It's absolutely impressive, also based on the freshness, because when you use Ahrefs, you use SEMrush, you see when the last update was made, and this is a link that was last visited by the tool 6 months ago or 8 months ago. You really don't know how often Google is going to check this, but you don't have a good feeling when the data you base your decisions on is too old. And this is where I think there's little around link research tools. I would say though that for the end user, really, I don't know, they're working on ways to make this more like following an assistant and following this. For the end user, I think it's really overwhelming. You want to work with an agency, with a consultant who knows how to use this, how to really make use of it, and you want to use it with care. It's very, very quick, very easy to select something and disavow it, meaning asking Google to ignore maybe a good link. Then you really want to know what you're doing.
Yeah. So also hand checking these links that have been flagged by the tool where it's potentially toxic, but you're not sure until you use the link detox screener and you look at it by hand to see, no, actually, this is a legitimate link. It's not a very amazing link, but I'm not going to disavow it. It's not toxic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you use Majestic for?
Majestic, I think one of the main use cases we have with Majestic is analyzing the link profile based on topics. So I really like to check out the link profile from competitors and say, okay, what kind of areas do they get links from? So is this rather from the tech area, or is this rather arts? Is this rather communication? Is this are these marketing sites? What kind of sets link to this? And then compare this again um, to our site or to our client site and say, okay, if we rely very often clients come in and they have been doing their own link building for years, and they might have a very strong over reliance on a particular topic. And that's okay, I'm an SEO agency, but most of my links come from I don't know, some industry very little related to SEO, and my competitors get links from marketing sites, which seems to be making more sense. This is an obvious gap that we really want to analyze, and I think Majestic does a really good does this really really well to illustrate where the topical gap comes from.
Yep.
And then obviously trust flow, citation flow are just metrics I think that are not easily found on another tool, where you really want to say, okay, links is just an important topic for every project, I think, especially after they have built up an initial base of content in the right way. And then you just need to look at those tools specifically and dedicate some resources to links.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what you were describing with seeing the topics, that's the topical trust flow uh,
Mm.
capability in Majestic. I really like looking at the trust flow and seeing how it changes over time. Gives me a sense for how trusted the site is and not just how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
And not every tool gives you trust. It's actually pretty unusual to get a trust metric. Majestic provides it, LRT provides it, but
Mm.
yeah, most tools do not. So it's just an
Yeah.
overall authority metric that doesn't differentiate the trust from the
Mm-hmm.
importance. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also the location on the page, when you look at the backlinks and say, okay, these guys are getting good backlinks, and then you check out where the location is, and you can just visually see all the links come from the footer somewhere, like it was a few years ago. Very often the authority someone had in the tools was really based on some site-wide footer links or something like this. But it just lets you easily explore this. And I think it's a little bit of an SEO disease probably, but that you can get lost in this kind of analysis, right? So you can kind of go through 100 backlinks and see what you can find out. What feelings do you get when you check out those backlinks? Are they really good for the brand? Are they located in a place where actually somebody might click on them, and can they actually carry some value? But it's important, I think, that you use the different tools, know how to use them, obviously, but use them in a way that then drives to action steps. So for me, what we are always trying to do is to break things down for our clients then, and to say, okay, we have done the number crunching, we have the tools, we have done the analysis. These are now action steps. So we know there is a trust issue with your link profile. We know there is an issue, an over dependence on a single article, for example. We know that the articles that drive traffic are not converting. These kinds of things are really then important for us to make sure that we pretty much are the connector between what the tools tell us and our client, who then very often they execute this themselves. Sometimes it's us executing, but there must be some sort of translation between the high level data and then translating this into specific actions we can take.
Yeah. Yeah. So with a link context tool inside of Majestic, for example, that shows very quickly, visually, without going to the page, where the link is placed on the page, like in the footer or sidebar or in the middle of the article, which would be much better. There are use cases for these things, and we're trying to get some objective met, or we're trying to get some sort of outcome. So the tool by itself is it's just busy work, or it's a distraction unless you can get actionable insights from it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be an example of an actionable insight that you would get from Majestic's link context tool to see that you've got let's say, an overabundance of footer links pointing to your site instead of in the main body of the content?
Yeah, we'll definitely try to to fit in with the link profile to what Google expects for a specific query for specific industry. And there might be an industry or a query where the most normal thing people get is a footer link for whatever reason. Can't think of one right now. But usually you would find that most of your competitors have some in-content links where they are just mentioned as a reference in the body text of a content. And if you don't have those kinds of links, you have an obvious gap. Right? At the same time, Google says the less likely it is that somebody clicks on a link, the less value it's going to carry, which makes sense. So if the only links you have to your site are in the last sentence of the entire blog post, and this is a continuous pattern you can identify, it's also something where you probably can expect little value is going to be carried over. Or if you just check out your the high authority links of your competitors and just say, okay, they're high authority, but wherever those links are placed, it's not a place where Google probably assigns too much value to it. You can then also see this from a different angle probably, and maybe pick those links that actually seem to be making sense very quickly.
Yeah. So Google many years ago released the what's it called? The reasonable surfer patent. And in that patent, Google described where links are unlikely to get clicked on. The reasonable hypothetical web surfer is unlikely to click on a link. Maybe it's buried in the footer in tiny text. Then Google's not going to count it either. So that's been around forever. That patent came out, I don't know, over a decade ago. So that's certainly in the algorithm where placement is going to have an impact. The links placement is going to have an impact. So I'm curious now that you mentioned some use cases of Majestic. Where does InLinks come in? Because InLinks is the brainchild of Dixon Jones, who used to be the primary spokesman for Majestic, and then he left Majestic and started InLinks. So where does InLinks come in, and what are some use cases for that tool?
Yeah, we had a good conversation with him as well on the podcast about entities and how entities are related. Really interesting if you want to geek out about SEO. He's a good partner to talk about. I want to start with how we did this before tools like InLinks or Surfer SEO. So before tools like InLinks or Surfer SEO, I was never a paper guy, so I would open up a notepad somewhere on half of my screen. Second half, I would have the Google top search results, and it would open up every single search result of the top 20 and make notes. What kind of topics are they talking about? What kind of questions are they answering? Are they using infographics? Are they using images? Are they using videos? How long is their article? Do they have long or short paragraphs? Do they have a sidebar? Do they have this? Do they have that? So I was essentially trying to find the common denominator of what Google apparently is looking for. And then I would pass my notes on to a writer and say, look, we need to produce something that's like the common denominator of this. And this would bring our clients automatically in a good position, right? So I'm very thankful to InLinks, to Surfer, to other tools out there right now that are pretty much doing a very similar thing on a more technical level. So first of all, comparing what is the difference between our situation and top ranking sites. So I can plug in an article, say, I want to rank for this and this keyword, and the tool is going to go out, grab the top 10, 20 search results and analyze what do they have in common, what's the gap, how long are they versus our article, how many paragraphs. It goes in a very, very strong detail where I think they're going into too much detail in my point of view. But it's really interesting when it comes to topics we are missing. So the way I always explain this to clients is I have two kids. Everybody knows this children's game where you connect dot A to dot B and dot C and dot D, and you connect all those dots with a pen and suddenly it's a cat. And this is how I try to explain clients what entities mean. So we have an entity that's somehow connected to another entity, and if we are missing quite a few entities, this cat might only have one ear and it might have no eyes at all because we're not connecting the dots. So for a machine, it's really hard to figure out what is the context of this. And this is where I go back to what I initially said. Google tries to make us believe that they can just figure things out. And in my experience, based on my testing, we are not there yet. We are getting there, definitely. I'm absolutely sure. But I think we are still a few years away from this, where Google still needs to have certain words on the page, but used in a certain context, not just mentioning them, but really making sure they are connected in the way a machine can understand it. We had just an example a few weeks ago. We're just making a phrase simpler. So this person is this profession, just like this. I don't know. David such and such is a such and such coach, for example, right? This is a very simple phrase that a machine can understand. They understand what kind of coach he is. They understand this is his name. They understand there is a direct relation. What he had before was a 2-line sentence, very, very long, very complex, very fancy, and Google apparently didn't understand it correctly. So they put him into an entire different category, or not, at least not in his category at all. And this was really this change we made on his website, but also on third-party platforms to make sure that Google can connect not only the dots on his page, but also the dots on that come from other pages. So if someone else talks in the same way about you, like you talk about you on your site, apparently this is true. So it's a connection that Google can make. And this is back to your question where Inlinks comes in. What Inlinks does really, really well is break down a page into entities, into concepts Google can understand. And it's going to tell you where you're not connecting the dots correctly, because you can mention something in an article, but if you're not really talking about it and connecting it with the rest, Inlinks is not going to validate it for you. So you talk about email marketing, you mention subject lines in some, as a side note, Inlinks might not tell you that you are done with subject lines yet. They might want you to really talk about subject lines to tick it off as a box and say, really, this is now something that that can be understood. This article also covers. So from my point of view, it's always this a little bit of a fear of missing out kind of thing, where you say, okay, am I missing something in my content that Google might think is really, really important in order to understand that my article goes deep enough? Mm-hmm. Because if every top ranking site is doing this and I'm not, probably I'm not as relevant, maybe not going as deep, or maybe this is just what users are looking for in order to judge whether my article is going to be worthwhile or should be linked to, etc.
So what would be an example where Inlinks found a topic that you were missing on your own site?
We had a project. It's a good question. It's always interesting when you have an example. We had a project. I think this was from Austria, in a site in German, from a company that manufactures windows and doors. And in German, you have 2 words to refer to the front door of your house. And they were, for whatever reason, the agency, everybody working on this project was only mentioning one synonym. Just because nobody thought about it, right? And then you would put these 2 Inlinks, and the Inlinks just analyzed this, compared it with the top ranking sites, and said, look, you're missing another concept, and there is another ID for this other concept that we are missing. And we put this in, and the site was really from an authoritative site in Austria. This took a week to rank on page 1. It was just that this was missing. Nobody thought about it. Second example, internet provider in Australia. They were talking about all kinds of fancy things, 5G, high bandwidth, I don't know what connections. They didn't talk about internet connection on their site. So when people searched for terms related to internet connection or B2B internet connection, business internet connection, they didn't show up. Mm-hmm. So this is a level of analysis. When you do this manually, it's not easy to come across all the terminology. You could imagine that Google could figure it out. Again, an example where Google didn't. And then you very often those tools can help. Now, InLinks has a lot of other features with structured data code, schema code generating. They do automatic links if you insert their scripts, so you can connect the different pages together, etc. Honestly, we're not using InLinks down to the last level. We use InLinks for what we think it's doing really well based on our methodology of how we want to do SEO. But I think between InLinks and Surfer SEO, I think those are the two tools for content optimization that we really like to use and really get a competitive edge as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Surfer SEO, because there's some overlapping features between InLinks and Surfer SEO. Can't you just use Surfer as the tool to get the topics that you're missing and not even use InLinks?
We do. We use both. We use both, honestly. I think Surfer is more on the customer level. So very often, if we have a client where we consult with them, we might just create a link from Surfer SEO because it's very user friendly, and they can type in their content and automatically get feedback whether they are missing a topic, etc. And we just send this down. InLinks is more the internal tool, where we then internally look, contrast maybe the two tools. What can they find out? There's also Page Optimizer Pro there. There are several tools that pretty much do the same thing, but maybe you use one and get a little bit of a different idea because it highlights a different aspect. You can use Cora and go really deep and say, okay, if I have no idea what else I could do, and I think I have done everything, I might go down like the next tool and get a different approach. So sometimes it's interesting to just use multiple tools for the same purpose, in my opinion, because they might drive you down different paths, especially when you have a tricky problem where it seems to be unexpectedly hard to rank something. I like to use another tool and get a second opinion, like consulting a second doctor.
Now, Surfer has this integration with Jasper, and they're both AI-based tools, but they're very different from each other. Jasper, of course, will write content. It used to be called Jarvis, and it's a good first stab at a content piece. I wouldn't just publish it as is. I mean, it's like without fact checking, it's gonna maybe say it grammatically correct, but it'll give completely wrong information potentially. That's pretty dangerous. But using those tools in combination, Jasper with Surfer SEO, are you experimenting with that, or any thoughts?
We
on
definitely
it?
do.
Yeah,
we definitely do. AI is here to stay. You can think about it as you wish. I remember Dixon Jones saying we are dumping down the internet because everybody's using AI to put out content, and nobody thinks anymore. There are different viewpoints. The fact is that we see one trend in SEO that has been going on for a while, which is around specific content. So the more specific you are, the more chances you have to rank. So very often we are going to have a client coming. Remember a few years ago when the longer the content was, the higher chances it had to rank. And if the competition had 3,000 words and you had 5,000 words, probably Google gave you a shot. If people liked it, you might even rank higher. We still have a few clients that had those really, really long pieces of content, and then they happen to rank on page 5, page 6, page 3 with their content for some really good keywords. And then the strategy we can then do is we grab those keywords because we see what is really ranking on page 1 for those keywords is really specific content. So you say, okay, rather than trying to rank with this pillar page, 5,000 words pillar page, let's create specific content around this, right? So there is a factor of quantity, I believe, where you can go really fast if you write a lot of content that's really specific, and maybe then in a second iteration make it more user friendly, get a copywriter, revise it, etc. So we have 5 writers on the team, and the team of 15 external writers, human writers, because we know we are not there yet where we can just grab something from AI and use it. But I definitely see we have been experimenting with it for years. It has come a long way. If I compare my first training I did internally with AI, I think 2 years ago or so, or 3 years ago, when I started training my team on it after monitoring it for a while, when you compare this to what AI puts out today, we've come a long way. So I guess we're going to see really good advances in the next year or two. At the same time, I really wonder how Google is going to react when it's going to be a click of a button and you create a site with 500 articles about a specific vertical. And it's just there, right? So a service, imagine a service, you pay your subscription, I want to create a site on cancer treatment, and I have put out 500 articles. I have the topic research automated. I have the content creation automated. I might find a way to automate the links with InLinks, for example, does this really well. I link this together, put it out there. How is Google going to react if this is going to be a mass product? Right now, it's a niche thing. A lot of website owners have no idea AI content even exists. What's going to happen in a few years? So using AI content today, in my opinion, is is a risk I wouldn't take as a consultant, because I say, okay, if I put this out today, maybe tomorrow there's an update and all the AI content that Google can detect if they want might get some sort of penalization possibly, or at least be devalued if they have a strong suspicion. So we try to use it as a first draft. So I have seen copywriting agencies that say they don't hire junior writers anymore, because for the first draft they can have an AI do this, or a junior writer with an AI can put out the first draft of a lot of articles every day, and then you have an experienced person try to make sense of it, fact check it with the client, etc. But quantity, I think, and AI is here to stay.
Yeah, I agree. And with Jasper and Surfer SEO, I actually watched a training that they did a combination training between the two companies. And the way that they were positioning Jasper was that it would write the first draft, but you wouldn't publish it as is. It would make it, instead of a 3-hour task to write an article, it might be a 1-hour task, because the draft that you start with is so much better than a blank screen. So
absolutely,
yeah. So I think that is the right approach to use AI, and not to hit a button and have a full site already published with content on a particular type of cancer or something. Now I'm curious if you like, what would be with the plethora of tools out there for all these different aspects of SEO, why would you need to invent your own platform? And what was the gap at the time that you were filling that you didn't find with any of these other software solutions that must have cost the developers many millions of dollars? And now you're going to create your own. So I'm curious to hear the origin story of how that happened.
The origin story really is, it started as a Word document. Okay, so the origin story is, we had a client come to me with a 70% ranking drop. So he built his site over 7 years. A core update came. He lost 70% of his traffic. Didn't sleep for 5 days before he came to a call with me. And yeah, first of all, we got him back. But then he said, "Look, I can't go through this again." Okay, so I know you can't guarantee anything, he literally said, but how can I minimize the risk for this to happen again? And I said, look, you really need to be close to what's happening in Google, right? You can't just do your own thing and then 6 months later check and your site went down. This needs to be, SEO first of all needs to be a consistent thing. You can't do this on your own. You need help, external help. And we came up with a framework, with a methodology, and ended up publishing a book about it because it worked really well. We called this the Erica framework back then, where we just said, look, we look at certain things in a rhythm of every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we would reassess the entire situation. We would reassess the competition. We would reassess what have we done so far and how is it working. We would check out content. We would check out links. We would check out what are the action steps we want to do in the next couple of weeks. And it started out as we just came up with this kind of methodology, and it resonated really well with how clients work as well, where they have their teams and their teams working on SEO, but their teams need guidance. And as you know, with SEO, you can do a lot of things that are going to be quote unquote good for SEO, but they are not. There are a few things that are going to really move the needle, especially when it comes to conversions, and others that are just boxes you tick. It's busy work, but it might not change something. So working on image search for a site trying to get leads from their content for their course may not be the biggest leverage point, but they might just do it because they think it's a good idea. Okay, so we started coming up with a methodology where we just say let's copy this together. Literally, I copied screenshots from the tools we had at hand for clients into a Word document, in a Google Docs document, and said, look, based on this situation, I walked them through on a call or in a video, and I said, look, these are the action items based on the current situation. So what we achieved by this was, first of all, transparency, because a lot of clients came and said, look, we have been with an SEO agency for 3 years. We have no idea what they did and why. The second thing we won was that we had a consistent process for them. And we said, look, if you don't do anything else for your SEO, these are the 4 tasks I want you to do in the next couple of weeks. And then 2 weeks later, we would do the same thing again. So this worked really, really well on this prototype in a Google Docs. We then translated this into a spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet. We had a more structured approach. And by the time I handed the spreadsheet out to clients, I had a call with our developer. He was already working with us back then. And I said, look, this is the spreadsheet you're going to turn into a web application, because this is the approach I really want my clients to take, because we grab the bits and pieces from analytics and Google Search Console that we think are actionable enough to really look at them. Clients don't have to log into analytics for SEO purposes if they don't want to, because they're going to find the relevant information on our end. So it was really the dashboard approach. We just wanted to have a dashboard and task list. This was the original thing. I didn't want them to waste their time trying to learn the different SEO tools. This is what we were here for, to prepare this for them. But then also made sure that we added additional features that are now comparing different things. So what are those URLs that drive the most conversions but have important keywords going down? This is not something you're going to very quickly click together with the tools. It's not something you're going to do very quickly with a spreadsheet. You need to combine quite some data to make this happen. But if you have a platform that imports all this data, you can then start making sense of it. And this is where we just really have this approach to always analyze the data and then translate it into action items. So if the tool tells me, look, this is a URL that's on a downwards trend over a few months, we can create an action and someone is going to take care of it. This is on a bigger site. This is really, really hard to do. We're just auditing a site with 8,000 blog posts, nightmare. Only 100 of them are probably important. Okay, but it's figuring this out based on conversions and what has been happening to those 100 in the last months is not easy. And now with the platform, this just opens up a lot of possibilities. So it was just a way how we wanted to work SEO really.
That's nice. So it's not just these are the 100 that are getting the most traffic, or these are the 100 that are getting the most links, or even these are the 100 that are converting the most visitors into customers, right? Having the highest conversion rate. It's a combination of a whole bunch of different factors.
Exactly. We just want to make sense of based on what the client wants to achieve. And the client usually, in our course, we work with a lot of online courses, for example. Clients very often want to build their email list. And I say, look, what are those URLs that are really moving the needle for you, right? What's happening to those URLs? Do they have suddenly certain keywords not ranking as well anymore? What has happened to those keywords? What has happened in the competitive landscape? What can we now do as an action in order to bring them back up, in order to stay current with where Google is going? And this really based on conversions in order to maintain the conversions where they are or grow them ideally.
Awesome. And the tool is called SEO Leverage.
The tool is called SEO Leverage, correct. So this is where we provide this on the platform, and then on top of this, actually then help clients really with a strategy. We have clients on a bootcamp where we give them a few months of consulting in order to streamline things, and then with the application and this initial base, they can then work out a lot of things, or otherwise just count on our help.
Awesome. Well, that sounds fantastic. And do you have a discount, I believe, for the first 5 customers that sign up through this podcast episode? Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a special offer for your audience. So I'm also going to personally be onboarding them and give them some extra guidance here and strategic advice, so they can then use the platform and get a special discount here.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. And what's the discount, and how do they get it? Do they have a special offer code, or is there a particular URL, or just mention when they sign up that they heard about
it. If they just mention that they heard us on your podcast is going to be enough.
Okay. And what's the discount?
Like everybody coming from Marketing Speak is going to get a 10% continuous discount.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. That's a great offer. And Gert, you're doing some amazing things out there with building tools and adding value for your customers and clients. That's really great to see how you've really blossomed since I first met you several years ago in James's mastermind. So best of luck to you.
Thank you very much, Stephan. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right. And thank you, listeners. So get out there, make the world a better place, get to the top of Google, of course, as well. But first thing is make the world a better place. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.